Hello, I'm Lindley Gooden. Welcome to Market Force's webinar on the future for the water industry post PR19, hosted in association with Vodafone. Now today we are looking at what PR19 and the increased use of markets and choice will mean for the water industry and its customers, with Ofwat releasing its draft methodology for PR19 in July and the Water 2020 programme helping to set out a new regulatory framework. There'll hopefully be much more clarity for the future of the water industry coming soon. There's obviously no doubt that this is a significant upheaval for everyone working in water, creating more competition and pushing water companies to change how they work. So we're here to talk through the changes that PR19 is likely to bring, what impact it'll have on your industry and how you can take advantage of that. Before we do, let's meet the fantastic panellists who will be helping us to understand PR19 and beyond. First of all, Ian Rule. Hello, Ian.
Hello.
Good to see you. Ian is Director of Wholesale Services at Anglian Water. He's responsible for providing wholesale services to retail customers, as well as water and water recycling services to 6 million domestic customers too. Ian has 20 years of experience within operations, customer service and regulation with Anglian Water. Good to see you today. Next up, we have Simon Oates. Hello, Simon.
Hello.
Good to see you. Simon has been a member of the executive management team at Southern Water for the past 4 years. He's recently taken up the role of Chief Customer Officer and has over 15 years of experience operating in senior management roles within government, independent sector regulators and 3 of the UK's largest regulated businesses, with a focus on corporate strategy, business planning and regulatory reform. Perfect. Good to see you today.
Thank you.
David Elliott, hello.
Hello.
David is the Group Director of Strategy and New Markets at Wessex Water. He has over 30 years of experience in the water industry and joined Wessex Water in 1985. David's held a number of posts over his career, including 20 years in operations. He was appointed a Director of Wessex Water Services Limited in 2007. Good to see you too. And last but not least, we have Liam Beard. Hello, Liam.
Hello.
Liam is Utilities Development Manager at Vodafone. Following the acquisition of Cable and Wireless worldwide by Vodafone, he moved into the Vodafone IoT division and has most recently worked on strategic transformation and smart utility projects on a global scale. He's currently developing solutions to support the transition to a digitally enabled energy and utility sector. Great to see you, Liam. Thanks to everybody and thanks to Vodafone for supporting our webinar today.
Thank you.
Couldn't do it without you. Okay, so we have, as always, lots to cover over the next hour with so many daily challenges for you and your customers, and you're bound to have your own questions and comments for us. So we want to give you the opportunity to put them right here to our panelists. If you're watching us live, you can send them in throughout the webinar, and you can do that either using the Twitter hashtag, which is PR19. Please do. It's public, let's talk about it, or the questions section right here on our webpage. We'll get to as many as we can towards the end of today's discussion. But let's start by talking about what Ofwat is likely to propose in PR19 and what this will mean for the industry. First of all, Ian, give us a rundown. What are the key areas that we need to look at in PR19?
Sure, I think there are 4 key pillars for PR19. Firstly, great customer experience. Secondly, resilience, certainly ensuring how we secure water supplies for future generations. Thirdly, the principle of affordability, having great affordable services to all and making sure we address the most vulnerable in our society. And fourthly, innovation. Now, the overall outcome will clearly be a combination of those four pillars. And I think one of the things we can say is it'll be different in different regions of the UK. And one of the challenges will be how do we balance the needs of future generations against the needs of current generations?
Always difficult when future comes into this. Obviously, you have to propose for the future, you have to forecast for the future, but forecasting resilience for a long period of time, despite the trends and things that we know about, it is very difficult. That would be my main worry in what's coming up.
It is, and I think one of the facets of our industry, it's a long-term industry, and some of the solutions we need to put in place, have lead times of 20, 25 years. So it's vitally important we start engaging our customers in these long-term debates around resilience. We're certainly in the east of England, we are one of the driest regions in the UK, a rainfall lower than Jerusalem, and the southeast is a massively growing region. and we face a real prospect. If we do nothing, in 25 years we'll be water companies without the water. Some of these long-term challenges, it's really, really vital we start having these conversations.
And David, this will affect, in many ways, the way the water industry functions, but how?
Well, I think let's start by actually thinking water is a system, not a utility. I mean, there are many, many different users of a water system. Water companies don't own the water, we rent it to some degree, we take it out, we treat it and we supply it to customers. But we use that water alongside nature, we use it alongside agriculture, industry. All of us to some degree have an impact on the quality and quantity of water we've got. And I think this PR19 is a real opportunity with the introduction of markets, looking at DEFRA's strategic policy statement, which is focusing very much on the wider catchment approaches, is to treat water as a system. And in any area, actually, the challenges are very different. So the challenges in the Wessex area are very different from the challenges in the east of the country. So in many ways, it is an opportunity to start differentiating ourselves along the lines of what are the opportunities and issues that we face in each of our regions. It's
really important, and we talked before we came on today so much about customers, and we'll get on to talking about that in great detail, but that interaction, that communication with customers, the onus from PR19 would be on you guys, but actually isn't that really important if we are also your customer army? And that we actually, interested in what our water usage is, how the related items, the things that we would buy in our everyday lives are related, and starting to look at the customer in that ecosystem, whereas actually we've just been receiving it until now. Simon, in terms of competition, how does that affect the water industry? That's a big issue obviously as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth looking at the start point, and actually I think the sector's got a good foundation. Whilst we are monopolies and we don't have a lot of competition in the sector at the moment, there's a real diversity in the supply chain, and many of us use a whole range of different outsourced service providers that I think bring different perspectives and different, more efficient ways of delivering into our sector already. But we know that in addition to the 4 themes that Ian's already set out, that Ofwat is really turning up the dial on ambition in this review. So I think we're going to have to look even harder outside our sector and how we can shortcut bringing new ideas in by really partnering.
And Liam, obviously, competition is so important. The partnership, the approach to partnership, which has affected other industries, it's here now.
Absolutely, yes. And there's a very clear intent within the PR19 structure to introduce competition in a number of different ways, both within the timescale of the pricing regime itself, through the introduction of additional markets into the sludge market and also into water resources, into investment in large-scale infrastructure, but also into the construction of the water companies' business plans themselves, and also into, as you'd expect, into incentives through the lifespan of the fixed pricing regime as well.
Do you think partnerships and competition, because that will bring partnerships, is one of the more important things to focus on right now?
Absolutely, yes. And partnerships in areas that perhaps aren't as immediately obvious as people may have looked at previously in the past.
Yeah. Simon, back to you. Water 2020 is on its way, clearly. The clue's in the title. How will that affect, affect us, customers, but also the industry itself as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of customers, clearly customers' expectations are constantly increasing. They get great service from a range of different retailers, and the water industry needs to step up. We're not where we want to be at the moment. Even the best in our sector are not really going toe-to-toe with the best in the broader economy. So I think you will see companies really upping their game, and as David and Ian have said, I think that will lead to some real differentiation and diversity coming into our sector. But I think some of the other broader challenges facing our industry, such as kind of water stress coming from climate change, will also mean that customers get to be much more active participants in the way companies run themselves and take ideas out to the customer base to shape them.
Ian, you're nodding with that.
Yeah. Yes, no, absolutely. And I think one of the things PR19 does do is gives companies the opportunity to have quite in-depth conversations with their customers to talk about some quite difficult and long-term concepts. We already talked about the principle of resilience, but I mean, I totally agree with Simon. I think our challenge as an industry is to ensure that our customers are active participants in the service, and certainly in business, water companies have to absolutely raise the bar on customer experience. I think our customers don't experience, or Anglian Water customers don't experience the service that Southern Water or Wessex Water provide. The benchmark, all our customers use is the benchmark of what's great experience out there, and that really is the challenge for the industry.
David, it comes with challenges, so many challenges, particularly when actually as a customer, and I'm a customer, we're all customers outside our daily work. Actually, if it doesn't go wrong, I've got no problems with my water supply. As long as it doesn't, as long as I'm not disrupted for a long time, as long as there's information coming to me as a customer, that's really important. But challenges are there. What key challenges do you think right now the industry is facing as we run up towards PR19?
Well, I think the key issue is how do we keep water relevant for customers? So you rightly said, I don't know if you've ever experienced a water service failure, but relatively few people have. In fact, less than 10% of our customers ever have really cause to contact us. And the vast majority of those contacts are on administrative things like, them moving house, or we've got a query about their water bill, rather than a service failure. So for many customers, actually thinking about water on a day-by-day basis in their busy lives, it's possibly something, actually, if it's working, I don't want to be bothered by it. But we do have a reason to connect with customers because of actually some of the challenges we have, particularly in the east of England, about availability of water, availability of the resource, or even how we deliver environmental improvements. So in our area, bathing waters are a big economic driver for us. So having really great bathing waters is really important. So I think the challenge is, and the opportunity actually, I would say, is around the relationships we form. So the conversation is not just about water and the bill, it's in the context of what interests the customers. Yeah. And actually that's about segmenting customers into things that they are interested in and adding water into that debate and making it a much richer experience. So it could be energy, it could be mixing it with energy, it could be mixing it with wildlife. It's having those different conversations in a way that customers feel engaged about and feel passionate about.
The difficulty is, isn't it, that every industry, unconnected from utilities, is all going for the same space, to bring our life, to make themselves relevant to our lifestyles. And that must be a conversation, you know it all too well. And from a customer perspective, why would I want to go to a water company to talk about well, not the energy, because that's actually directly related, but perhaps the things I buy out on the street? Why should that become part of my lifestyle? Now, I need it, and so do my plants, and so does my vegetables, and so on, every animal that lives near water. But actually, to make that relevant is difficult when it's such a crowded space. Simon?
Well, I think you actually hit on the opportunity for the industry, because actually water is at the base of pretty much everything we do in our daily lives and everything we produce. So that kind of smart TV we've got our eye on at Christmas, you couldn't manufacture that without water. The population growth that we're likely to experience within the southeast and the eastern region, we can't service and meet that population growth, build the houses, the broader infrastructure without water and being able to connect those properties. So I think we've got a huge opportunity to bring to life. Water may be low cost, but its economic value is absolutely phenomenal, and really get that appreciation. So there is an education amount, but it's also then having the two-way conversation with customers. How do they want to shape and participate in the way that we are stewards of this fantastic natural resource?
And the positives too, the related parts of your industry, the ones, things like, whether I use a water bottle today, or whether I do invest in the right types of water, or I do help people who need cleaner water. Those things are a choice that I can perhaps make. Not always our luxury as customers. We may not have the money to do different things with our money in the same way that we'd like to, but actually there are so many related items that could be directly relevant. Do you think, Ian, that our experience of the water industry needs to change or will change as a result of PR19?
I think we'll see the ongoing movement of water becoming more relevant to people's lives. I think in terms of the challenges we face as companies, but also the challenges we face as the UK. We take the principle, we take the problem of climate change. Water is absolutely at the heart of that, how we manage the water cycle, and water companies are an absolute key player in that. So I think how we actively engage our customers within that is really, really critical. Probably going on from what Simon says, I think there are probably two ways two ways to do that. I think that there's the prospect of actually going to customers rather than making customers come to us. But when customers do contact us, to actually engage and start to engage in meaningful debate, become relevant to people and to our customers' lives.
Liam, we'll come to you in a second, then I'll come to David. We'll talk about the ways that you can start to approach that and start to personalise experience. We'll get into that more in the next section. But it's 12:14. If you're watching us live, do get in touch. You can get in touch on Twitter, and the hashtag, simple as that, is PR19. Do get in touch. We really want to hear from you. You're a fundamental part of the last 10 to 15 minutes of our conversation today. And also you can do it here on the webpage. Simply write your question. We'll answer it later on with any luck. Okay, so do get in touch. It'd be really good to hear from you. But yeah, I mean, look, thinking ahead about the technologies, about the ways you can start to engage with customers. This will probably, more than ever before, be an important part of what the water industry does. Communication, getting in touch, listening, monitoring. All those things are really important to look at, aren't they?
They're very important. I think one of the key areas around technology that has really come to the light in the last 5 years is the ability to get more information on a basic level from more places at a cheaper rate than ever before. And this is relevant across the utilities, not just the water companies. There's been the development of technologies such as low power wide area, which is almost purpose-built, though, for the water environment. Historically, it's been very difficult to budget in successfully to get to sensor points and assets, potentially offline assets, which obviously makes them very inefficient, and it doesn't give you real-time information, hence it leads to poorer customer service ultimately and lower efficiency. The introduction of technology such as narrowband IoT, which is the Vodafone's flavour of low power wide area, means you can get to more places more cost effectively, more reliably, and develop a much greater visibility of your assets and therefore be more responsive and more useful to your customer.
It's true in so many industries, that flexibility, that ability to use competition in a positive way, to kind of lift the lid on the way my big business works. And you know what? I'm going to test and learn. I'm going to start to bring in ideas, innovators. Is that the way, do you think, Simon, that the industry is going to have to, but also embrace in terms of the next steps?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I take a kind of example within my own company, within Southern Water, we've got about 90% of our customers on a meter already. Not all of those meters are smart meters, so they don't provide daily usage updates to customers. So we're looking at getting out there in the next 3 to 4 months and starting pilots to see if we can put some daily usage readers, loggers onto meters. How will that start to enable customers to interact with us, and what's the richness of data we can get, that they can get, and then what direction can we take that into the benefit ultimately of our customer base?
David, yeah.
Well, I think it goes back to this point about keeping water relevant in many ways. So, water is part of our lives, and it's a universal service, so it has to be affordable and accessible to everyone. But actually, we talk about competition in markets, but in many cases, this is about offering choice to customers. It's about how we can personalise the service that makes them more interested in engaging with us. And it might be that it's not just about water, as I said earlier, it could be about energy. So, for example, we acquired an energy switching company, Flipper, and many people might look at a water company and say, well, why have you bought an energy switching company? But it's about actually trying to start personalising that service in a bundled way for customers that actually says, we recognise that you are shopping in different ways. For example, you are using Amazon as a different channel, you're using online, all these online portals, you're consuming entertainment in a very different way. And staying relevant to customers is about modernising the service so that you're engaging them in all the myriad of ways that they like to engage, but can personalise it. So if they can come onto a portal and see their water, energy, and you can give them nudge messages alongside that with a bit of gamification, a bit of competition in there about how customers do things, then you've got a much richer way of doing it. But I don't think it's necessarily all about the water company doing it. I think it's about the partnerships you begin to form that differentiate yourself from others in this sector.
And you know what, there is an example of where perhaps, although it's separated, we talked about this before we came on, the wastewater side, that perhaps could give us a few ideas as to how collaboration, which is already needing to happen in that area, can lead the way, potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a number of things being introduced into wastewater, specifically around sludge markets. that are there to generate competition. Some aspects of this are around the where you choose to have production done. There's other measures being brought in around the investment in new production facilities. But the bit that's kind of more interesting, I suppose, is the integration of alternative organic matter into the same process.
Yeah.
And you see this reflected in the gas industry as well, where they're using alternative gas forms into their system. Why not into the water industry as well?
It's difficult, isn't it? Yeah, that test and learn principle is very difficult when it's heavy infrastructure that actually is, has not needed to change. If if it's broken, it will be fixed. If it's invisible in terms of water and wastewater, actually, customers are being very well provided for. So actually, identifying those new areas to work on, new innovations, it can be quite difficult. Ian, in principle, do you feel an air of innovation being embraced, being adopted in certain areas of the business?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I mean, innovation's at the core of our industry, and I can only see kind of that heat turning up. I mean, I think it's actually about setting ourselves some really ambitious goals, and we set ourselves the goal in the last to halve our amount of embodied carbon in our new assets. It's recognising the huge role we play in tackling and adapting to climate change. So I think that innovation is at the core of our industry, and perhaps going to some of the challenges that we face going forward in terms of how do we make water relevant to people's lives. If we're talking about situations 20, 25 years forward when we are going to be in water scarcity, nudging people's behaviours so they consume less is vitally important. If we don't do that, the unfortunate effect will be we will be in the territory of building huge big capital schemes, and that will have the long-term impact of putting bills up. So it's in everybody's interest.
So interesting. I've got to move on. I've lost track of time already. It's been so fascinating, and there's so much to talk about. But clearly, there are significant changes that we're hearing about coming with PR19. Now let's flip the discussion around a bit and think more specifically in detail about customers, how their expectations are changing. Simon, first of you, how do you think customer expectations perhaps are already changing?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges we face in the sector actually comes from the absence of competition. Because what that means is our customers don't shop around with other water retailers. If I take kind of my end of Southern Water's business, the retail end. So they aren't comparing us to Wessex, to Anglian, and working out how Southern Water stacks up. They are comparing us very directly with very mature, competitive markets who quite rightly have invested very hard in marketing, branding, and sculpting their customer experience over many, many years. So we've got a real challenge in terms of the legitimacy and perception of our sector if we aren't standing up to those benchmarks. And to Water 2020, Ofwat have quite rightly decided to nudge and move the sector away from just industry league tables to now comparing us with retailers outside of our sector.
It's one heck of a jump to go from, I hesitate to use the word monopoly, but it's already been mentioned, the self-contained, my area, this is where I work, and type of company, as in the water industry, and where they're already going. The choice that is already out there for so many other industries, including utilities. Are water companies currently, do you think, able to deal with these shifting expectations, Liam?
I don't think they're in as bad a place as they might be, because we're not starting from ground zero, as it were. Other industries have learnt so much about this, and we've referred to this already in terms of the additional services, the bundling services they're offering. So the lessons have been learnt, which means there's a good footing to start on. And in following that approach by offering more relevance, certainly more personalised relevance to individuals, to consumers, and applying technology where necessary. I think it's a key thing to recognise that moving forward, the individual, the water company, the asset, the field force, they're all going to be interrelated. So ultimately we will get to a point where this is ecosystem of things that are informing each other, and that's the sort of the lesson to be learned there.
Well, in terms of that customer relationship, David, yes, PR19 is going to change the relationship, but it sounds as though actually There's a lot of work, so much work being done already in terms of the importance of the customer relationship, which is really, really the place to start. But personalisation, you first mentioned the word. It's a word we all know only too well. How can personalisation start to improve that relationship?
Well, Ofwat are very keen, and it's embedded in their approach to ODIs and upper quartile performance. So in a market, those better performing companies that are more engaged with their customers are going to get more customers and will benefit financially from doing so. And Ofwat are keen to mimic that in many ways. So then they don't want to reward mediocrity. They want to ensure that customers are getting the service that the best possible services, and if they're not, then there needs to be some sort of remediation, whether that be a rebate, or they call it penalties. I'm slightly nervous about the word penalties. But I think actually the key to this is not thinking that the water company in a vertically integrated way is the solution, because I think actually we are water companies. And actually the personalisation comes from the partnerships you form with other companies about offering services that give customers true choice. So they may wish to personalise their service around a particular theme, but they may not to. They may want just to deal with the water company, but in many cases they may want to bundle their water bills with their energy bills and their insurance bills and all the other things that they do in their household. That offers different ways of how they can be engaged with. And I think it's about those partnerships we start to form as a sector, which will start to differentiate the way we do things nationally.
Again, it's such a big jump. There are a couple of elements here of that very important way forward, which is the operational, the cultural, in terms of the way people view customers and how integrated that is through the company, and also the technological. Together they work really well together, but it's very difficult for them all to work in the same direction. Is there any ideas in terms of the training, perhaps, or the way that people work? Any thoughts, Simon?
Well, I was actually going to add another theme in as well, which is how can we add in to that personalisation of the customer experience something that supports the kind of preservation of providing the raw service. We've talked about water scarcity, climate change. So one of the things that we're looking to do is how you marry the two. So we're looking very hard at different pricing options, pricing bundles that would encourage customers to use water more wisely, and that they would get a benefit directly for that in terms of lower bills, but clearly it would help us as a company because we're in an incredibly water-stressed area needing to support some very significant growth numbers within the southeast region over the coming years.
Any other thoughts on how you can improve the way you work in terms of getting that customer engagement, but also the staff, the team engagement?
Yeah, I guess a lot of the information and things we've talked about is about how we gather information, how we master information, how we as an industry embrace the big, I suppose, one of the words, the big data agenda at the moment. And I think there's a question of agility. It certainly comes to understanding your customers, being relevant to them. Understanding how customers want to interact with you, and it does come down to that collection of information. I think it comes down to a mindset as well around agility. I think that's something that the industry absolutely needs to learn.
David,
yeah, just to jump in there in many ways. Going back to your question about what does it mean for staff and the skills in the sector. We've been an industry that's been largely utility for 30 years since we were privatised, nearly 30 years. And we were privatised with an imperative, which at that time was to build assets. So a lot of our embedded approach to dealing things is about managing assets, managing resource, and the science around it, with a utility customer service veneer on it. And actually, what we're seeing now is the need to have a whole host of different skill sets going forward. And around customer engagement, around the digital arena, around retail. These are all new areas for us. And I go back to the point that it's quite difficult to steer an oil tanker of the size of a water company in an agile world like retail, and where things offers are changing on a daily basis, let alone a weekly or a monthly or a yearly basis. So I think it will come back down to how we structure ourselves as companies in many ways. So Wessex have elected to separate themselves into a group of companies. So you've got your wholesale business, which owns the assets and is delivering the sort of wholesale services, but then you're seeing these other hosted companies appearing, like Flipper, like Entrade, like Water to Business, which are then personalising that service in a relevant market, and we're employing people who are skilled in that particular market to make that experience richer.
The great thing is that if, for instance, financial services can move that ship around, and they've done that, they're doing that right now, then absolutely an infrastructure-heavy industry such as water and wastewater can do that too. That's an important lesson, isn't it? And something that actually should hearten people, at least stop the resistance to making it customer focused. It's not just soft anymore, it's really important to our business. Simon, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, and I think absolutely right, and I think it is that you mentioned in your question that the mindset. I think one of the things that to become on the internet as well about big data that we've looked at is we don't have to do everything ourselves. So, customer insight. Well, if we work with some of the partnership organisations in our region, I'm thinking, in the South East region in particular, we have people like the South Downs National Park, RSPB, the local Wildlife Trust. All of these organisations have fantastically rich data about our customers, and having that sharing of data means that we can get to some of these answers very quickly. And that's just a very small micro example of how we need to change as companies. We don't have to go out and do all of that proprietary research ourselves.
Without going into too much detail on the types of data, what headline, what kinds of data? Internet of Things, clearly very important in terms of understanding customer behaviour and customer likes and their sentiments and so on. What key bits of data, areas of data do you think are particularly relevant to water, or indeed, if it becomes a lifestyle process, a lifestyle service that doesn't just involve water, how can you use data? What sort of data is useful?
I think it's fundamental to be clear on the business objectives or outcomes you're looking for, because there is an enormous amount of data, and the biggest challenge is working out which bits are useful. So turning it into value is imperative. The options, though, are enormous, whether we're looking at predictive analytics, whether we're looking at trending. Maybe it's to do with welfare. Some of the things we'll talk on a bit later on is around how you can be both non-intrusive but valuable to the consumer at the same time. So as well as that, you're obviously looking at things like asset efficiency, outage management and rapid repairs and that kind of thing. So it's just making sure you're focusing where the value is for it.
David, first of all, wouldn't that be great if you had all that data and monitoring sewn up?
Well, we've got tons of data, absolutely tons of it, and sometimes I think your point was spot on. It's actually the real trick here is understanding how you use that data intelligently and start to change the way you can deliver your services to be more effective, more efficient, and more relevant to customers. So, for example, we have a lot of information about environmental data, about river water quality, about the quality of water in the environment. Going back to water as a system and Internet of Things, in many ways, agriculture has a big part to play in the quality of our water. In fact, and that was, we set up a separate company called Entrade, which is focused on this Internet of Things, because what it's trying to do is just look for opportunity and cost. So for us, it costs us about somewhere between 20 and 50 pounds per kilogram to remove nitrogen from water. In some water bodies, we've got to remove 600 tonnes. Agriculture can do it for £2 per kilogram. If you understand the information in your system, you can start to make better choices about who does what in that system more effectively.
It is about, Ian, about being informed, about making better choices. We talked about markets before we came on today. And I had to ask the question about markets. Is it just a business relationship? Is it just about finance? Well, it's about choice, right? So if you can make better choices, then like every other industry that's gone through such turmoil and change, you come out of the other end with clear decision making.
I think it is, and I think David's made some great points there. Certainly, we can talk about markets in a number of different ways. I think we can talk about markets in terms of the sharing of information, and I think the whole remit, if we look at the prospects of resilience, and we look at the flooding resilience, for an example, the ability to share information between different partners maybe on common platforms enables us to actually make better outcomes that are better for resilience, better for customers, are innovative, and affordable. So we start hitting all those 4 pillars that we talked about right at the beginning. And I think those are some of the challenges we have as an industry.
But what a great solution if you actually do then harness data, you harness the information, you harness the customer relationship. Actually, what we want as customers is almost to stand still to make sure that the basics are done brilliantly, and that actually, you know what, I like my water company enough to deal with them in different areas. I trust them enough to do that. So, Liam, there's a holy grail there to be drunk from, isn't there, in many ways?
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting point. Looking at the power of the internet is much more than just connecting stuff together. One of the key facets of it is that integration of third parties, whether they're intra-connected, related industries, or just third-party stuff that you weren't aware of previously. So you may have connected to the Met Office previously, but there is so much out there, whether we're talking to the RSPB or the Rivers Authority or whoever it is that can be brought in to further inform you. Yeah. That's what the internet's about, is harnessing all that capability and platform processing and different connectivity options, but ultimately it's the information that counts.
Amazing, there is clarity to be had among all the turmoil. It's fantastic. Let's move on. Let's talk about competition. We have seen obviously how both customer pressure and the impact of PR19 are pushing water companies to think about new ways of working, new ways of dealing with data and information and customers. Let's now talk about how you can ensure that you're ready to thrive in a new, more competitive environment, more partnership perhaps. So how can water companies, first of all, Ian, start to develop an operational structure, that nimble, flexible operational structure which we referred to already, to get ready for these competitive innovations?
I think David probably made the point earlier. I think what we'll see is a probably increasing differentiation between businesses, and each business will have its own strategic objectives. So some businesses may choose to compete in all sorts of different areas. Some businesses might actually just decide to close in on their network plus, if you like, part of their business. And I guess we've almost seen that that differentiation with the recent opening of the non-household market, where businesses have taken different approaches. And I think you can probably argue in terms of structures, you can have multiple different structures and they can probably both serve the same ends. I think it probably comes down to broad questions of capability. I think it comes down to probably the point about agility. And I think it also comes back to the points probably about mindset. And I'd probably, one of the things I'd say about the industry, and certainly look at my business, Anglian Water, in terms of the mindset we've taken for many years now. It's not about just being a water company. It is about out there being, with those leading organisations. It is about changing the debate. And really having influence on the things that really matter for the future of our communities.
It's very true, isn't it? And Simon, the idea of competition, which has clearly been the case in all competitive markets all the way through, but actually the partnership element is coming through very clearly in other industries. It's something that can be learned from. That positive light on competition is going to be the way to be known for certain services, not necessarily location-based in the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what goes with that is how do you create the right culture in your organisation to be incredibly outward-focused. So back to one of my previous comments that my customers, unless they're about to kind of move significant distance geographically, will not experience the retail offering of other water companies, but they do experience loads of retail offerings every single day from other companies. So I need to know who their energy providers are. What's the skew and the concentration of the energy companies within my region, and what's their pipeline of innovation that's going to be coming through in their customer experience? Because if my water customers are receiving that energy retail experience, then I need to be tactically working out whether I want to follow and be similar, or whether I'm happy to differentiate and go a different route. But if I don't know that information, if I've not got that outward focus, then I'm inevitably going to fall behind.
David, yeah.
Well, I think picking up on that in many ways, it's actually going back to saying, well, what is the role of a water wholesaler in many ways? Going back to that point you made very, very well, which is that, for most people, I turn on the tap and the water comes out, I flush the loo and it goes away. And that's exactly what they want. They want that certainty that it's going to work day in, day out, irrespective of what's happening around us, at a price that they can afford. So, I mean, to my mind, it's the job of the wholesaler to be the provider of that network of assets that others can then come in and personalise. So it may be part of a, maybe Wessex have chosen to do that as a group by forming these other companies. You're absolutely right, other investors and other companies may just choose to be asset infrastructure providers. But I think the key opportunity here is to say, what are the services that the infrastructure can provide? And how can others utilise that infrastructure? We talked about open source type thing, that type of open source approach of how do I use that infrastructure to deliver a better service to customers in a particular area. It may be a water stressed area, or it may be, as I said earlier, that maybe that they really value the quality of their beaches, for example. So there are a whole host of ways that others can come in and provide that service, which makes the infrastructure more effective and efficient, and therefore helps keep prices down.
The thing is, this is the lack of engagement, the inability to think of customer first and coming in. That was striking the insurance industry for a long time. Now, you guys know water like nobody other. They can't just walk in and become what you are, but the principles apply that. Flipping that around, having the customer view makes all the difference and can engage. It still comes down, doesn't it, to quality, to the service, to the ability to deal with problems when they happen. I don't think you'll find that no matter how many partnerships you strike up, those other companies will walk in and do what you guys do. So it takes, there is a certain trust there that is always underlying from consumers that can be built on. Do you think realistically that we as consumers will start to work with you guys or be more interested in what you're doing to develop our lifestyle from your corner rather than, say, Amazon? Other retailers are available. Do you think we'll go to the real estate? Do you think there's a chance that we actually will come to you for everything home related? Just from the outside looking in, Liam, with all the clients that you have, do you think that there is a reliability in terms of water? We want clean water. We want those services. That this could be the place that people come to for, say, everything home related?
I see no reason why not. I think water companies have an inherent level of trust from their consumer base. Water is, as we've all obviously acknowledged, an absolute fundamental part of life. People's interest is certainly more around their impact on the world these days, their impact on the environment, impact on carbon emissions. Water plays a massive role in that. So having the ability to understand the life cycle aspect of what they're consuming, including water but other things as well, is of interest and relevant to consumers. And this is, it relates to but is not necessarily entirely linked to what they're paying as well. So having that knowledge and that information allows them to live a particular lifestyle in a way they want, which is again is an element of freedom and choice for them.
I went in with the customer, the domestic customer route there, but it does apply. If I get a good deal, if I get good information, if I have a good relationship, then of course I'm going to go back there and ask a question about my further services. It's really, if there's a trust there, that's certainly applied to financial services, it's coming in. There is an underlying trust there. Let's just briefly talk about the whole value chain. Simon, how can you empower not just your people within your company, but also the people across the value chain to work with customers, to share your values, to have a great partnership?
I think it's back to that outward focus. I think we sit at the centre of this kind of water ecosystem, I think was the word David kind of used very, very well early on. And therefore I think it's really important that we get out there, and as we're laying the foundations for our plans for 2020 and beyond, that we really create the right quality of network amongst the rich stakeholders that we need to help us co-deliver. Because unless we've got those networks in place, we don't quite know what information flows we are or aren't missing, and they're therefore building our plans going forward. So the first step for me would be kind of getting out there, being and making sure that my company is right at the forefront of building those networks going forward.
And we talked about resilience, which was such an important thing. Clearly that's fundamental in terms of infrastructure to how we cope with disasters or problems or lack of supply or higher population in the future. But in terms of innovation, how do you start, Ian, to bring in, yes, the technologies, the ways of working, the innovations into your organisation and your value chain? How do you start, right now, how do you start to do that? Do you have to just basically get the business case sorted out, get the board involved? Do you have to think about what my business does best and which areas now my customers might be interested in? How do you start to approach that next stage of innovation?
I mean, I think there's a mindset question around innovation. I think the point about creating long-term partnerships, certainly in terms of, I think the world we're moving into, the digital world, the information world. I think we'd be naive to assume that we had all that information and all that talent internally within our organisations. I think there is the need to create these long-term partnerships with organisations who have been through some of these journeys and get some of that great talent into the water industry. If I'm honest, I think that's the way to go. But I do, I probably agree with Simon and David. It is very much about maintaining that outward-facing approach for the industry and for our businesses.
Yeah, Liam. Yeah.
It's an interesting point you made there. What I've seen across all of the utility sector is the introduction of third parties. So the innovation and the novelty of it actually coming from people who perhaps were never involved with the utilities in the past. So the people who are doing the clever analytics platforms and the number crunching and this kind of thing are perhaps from the IT sphere, or perhaps they're data scientists, but they weren't utility specialists. But they're the people we're relying on now to provide that really developed intelligence.
Absolutely. I mean, I do think, from the perspective of the industry, we've got a great proposition. We're providing a service that's vital to life. The whole prosperity of our communities is based upon having clean, healthy water, a prosperous environment. And certainly what we're finding is we're able to attract these kind of individuals increasingly into our business. Now, whether it is through long-term partnership arrangements or actually attracting talent direct from universities.
Is that really happening? Because water is a staple of life. It feeds into everything we do. But is it the sexiest place to work? We've got to ask that question.
I would say so, but
you would say so.
I've been in it for a long time, but I think it goes back to actually the conversations you're having with others. We are a sector which, as I said earlier, has grown up in many ways and evolved primarily around infrastructure provision and services around that infrastructure. But actually go back to thinking, taking a look out and saying, water is going back to water as a system. Keep saying it, but it is. It's rich in all in its biodiversity, its environment, its users. Every area is different, and actually, there's some really interesting ideas going on out there. And the key to this is spotting the opportunity, and then having an organisational structure which allows you to go for that opportunity and exploit it and see where it goes. Innovation, it doesn't always work. As we know, it's 7 out of 10 innovations fail, but 3 out of 10 of those innovations will be potentially nuggets that will significantly change things. And it's having an organisation which is prepared to take that risk. They may not do it within the normal wholesale business. They may decide to put the risk outside of that, and thereby earn higher returns when it does actually pay off. Because that's the opportunity, is actually about creating those vehicles for
it's the model of success in business, isn't it? Liam, yeah.
I was just going to agree absolutely. I think it's clear that the more that the industry develops towards innovative, interesting development, the more attractive it becomes for people to come in, the more attractive for the right people to come into it.
Absolutely.
It should no longer be, any of the industries shouldn't be industries for people who want an easy ride. We want people to be sparking, to be generating the new ideas, and we've seen it already in similar sectors. So it's good to see that the potential certainly there within water.
And I think it's that connectivity or kind of interrelatedness of our industry with so many others that means that I think we've got a good platform. So I don't think it is seen yet as the most exciting, but I think we should be able to get it there over the future. The link with kind of economic growth in the southeast, with house building, with climate change, with the quality of the natural environment, bathing. Well, it's connected to so many different parts of life, and if we can tell that story, you bring in so many other different industries. So are you joining the water sector, or actually are you joining a key building block of national infrastructure that economy can't survive without.
It's so true. And as we draw to a close and we come to your questions, please do write in your questions. If you're watching us live, we really want to hear from you. So send in a question, no matter how short or long. I'll paraphrase as needed, but please do write in, particularly as we look to the future with younger people working with us, millennials, although the word is overused, younger people working with us. It's not only important to have communication, really clear, good communication, and for people's ideas to be adopted by your organisation. That's fundamentally important. But also, the division between life and work, for anyone working within any modern company, has become blurred. I want my principles to be applied and my ideas to be applied across. So actually, these applications, the communication with customers and with people working with you, that's going to be fundamentally important as we go forward.
I think it is, and I think it comes down also. I think people are attracted by the organisation's values as well. I mean, I think if you look at most people who work in the water industry, they work in it for a number of reasons. There's a deep why, because they value, they believe they're doing something beneficial for society, doing something beneficial for the environment, and certainly that's the ethos that Anglian Water inspires. I mean, one of the things we've just been really proud to have achieved is being named Responsible Business of the Year, and I think that breeds a really positive marketplace that then attracts talent, because it's a kind of industry people want to work in.
Absolutely. Well, look, that's been really fascinating. We've covered so many areas so far, and we do hope you found the insights, the broad principles, the detail from our panel really helpful today. Wherever you are in the world, we now want you to share your comments and experiences with us for the last 10 minutes. So we've been asking you to get in touch, both on the webpage right here and also through Twitter using the hashtag PR19. We still have time. You can get in touch and we'll get our panel's thoughts and ideas on those. First of all, question to my screen here from Nick Haig, I think it is. I hope that's correct. Lead analyst at DEFRA. Great to hear from you today, Nick. People here may know you. Do the panel think that PR19 will help to meet the resilience agenda as visualised in Water UK's recent research on a national long-term water resources framework? A bit more information. The report looked at factors including population growth, drought, climate change, and so on. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's a great question, and I think I'll probably go back to some of the things I said right at the beginning. I think the balance for PR19 will be how do we balance the needs of future generations, which was a lot actually about what the Water UK report was looking at, with the needs of current generations. Now, I think what wouldn't be a great outcome if we kicked all those decisions down the road another 5 years, because what we would be doing is storing up significant issues for future generations. I think one of the interesting prospects will be Ofwat's already been on record as saying they're expecting a decade of falling bills. How does that work with that long-term resilience debate? I think that's an interesting question.
Any thoughts, Simon?
I mean, to kind of answer the question directly, I think it will. I mean, look how many times we have actually used the resilience word, even in this kind of short discussion. So I think the sector has always looked at it. I think the prioritisation of it by government and by Ofwat as part of in the run-up to this review means that the depth and quality and the new approaches to how we're tackling with resilience, the different conversations that are being had with partners, stakeholders, customers. So I think the foundations are there. I do come back to a point that you said, I think, in your opening remarks, how we bring all of those different views together and how we take the right judgment around the pace at which we need to invest to bring on greater resilience is a really tricky question, and I don't think we've quite unlocked what the framework is for taking those decisions, even though the right conversations are happening.
But the word which is now used more broadly rather than just in IT is agility. If you're able to flex and move with the situation, have the processes but also the systems in place, you're starting to be able to do that. David, what do you think about that?
Well, I think in many ways, actually, DEFRA themselves spotted the opportunity here, because their strategic policy statement is all about long-term and about system thinking, and then about how you use markets to optimise the system. And the key to this is our planning needs to be looking at saying, are we that to ensure that we're not consuming things in a way that is degrading the system. In other words, we are progressively mortgaging the future by consuming everything today. Where we've got to be is that we are progressively improving the our environment and our natural resources. It's freely given to us, it's freely available, but it's not. That doesn't mean it should be freely used. And actually the discipline we've got to get into is saying, how do we ensure that future generations enjoy our natural capital and are protected by our natural capital in the same way that we are today, or even in a better way? Because actually, the challenges aren't going to get any easier; they're going to get even more challenging. So, taking that long-term perspective across everything we do, utilising what we've got today more efficiently, using markets is the right approach.
And to have that infrastructure, that ability to flex and move and to be agile and to respond to customers. From this environmental sense, I mean, the principles still apply, which is having your systems in place, understanding what you do well, understanding and monitoring the infrastructure you have. If you can start to do that properly, really well, real time, then you're on the right track.
Absolutely. And the phrase that I thought I picked up on most there was around, it's not an immediate hit.
Yeah.
It's not something you can do on day one. There is so much that should be done and can be done. It's about targeting those things that are most important and have a long-term view, because it's going to take a while to do it, and it covers so many different areas, and there's obviously a limited budget for it as well. But the ability, the technology is there to support it. It's just a matter of prioritising which bits are done first and which is going to be most effective.
I'm going to bounce through two more questions very briefly. We have a Grant Wordsworth. Similar question, I think. Quality manager at Affinity Water Wholesale. Post PR19, how do the panel see the potential increased water demand through the housing developments and climate change influencing the competitive market prior to PR24 evolving? So let's just very, very quickly, probably just one or two, competitiveness, the actual market, the partnership market. Is this going to drive the competition? David?
Well, I think in many ways we're already starting to see the signs of that. So new development is, there is a real opportunity for us to grab new development and deliver it in a way which improves the efficiency of how we consume water services, whether it be for drinking water purposes or even wastewater. And going back to the fact that actually that doesn't necessarily need to be delivered by the wholesaler themselves. There are other companies that already exist out there that do exactly that, like Albion Water, which is an inset services provider. It focuses on reducing the per capita consumption of the developments it serves. Yeah. And the idea should ultimately be that actually it's not necessarily in competition with the incumbent wholesaler. It is, if that development can only utilise off-peak capacity in the network, then it is making the network more efficient as well as delivering a better service to customers.
We need to move on to the final question very quickly. Thank you very much to Teresa Corey, who's just sent through a question. Very good. Robert Murphy, though, to my screen here, Head of Research, Energy and Utility Skills. What do the panel think of the workforce renewal challenges for PR19? What can employers, both individually and collectively, do to ensure they have skilled workforces that they need? I'm going to just very quickly, very briefly, what do you think, Simon, in terms of getting the good people in?
Huge challenge. I think the industry needs to invest more. I think we should be looking at again, collaborating and looking at skills academies to bring on new talent, but also looking at the other end of the age spectrum as well and seeing how we can keep kind of ageing workers in our workforce for longer.
Really good points.
Yeah, I mean, I think the investment in working, probably Simon's point, working with academies, particularly on some of the the STEM skills, which we are absolutely still going to need within our industry, is absolutely key.
David, what do you think?
Same, getting to the children earlier, actually, particularly around the STEM skills, getting them to recognise that a career through technical apprenticeships is just as worthwhile as going for a degree, and just as fulfilling in the longer term, so we broaden the skill base.
We have a world of imagination around us when we're young, and we love water. Let's keep that going. What do you think right now? What can we do? What should people be looking at?
One of the top area for me in terms of making a wider skill set more useful is around marrying digital awareness, sort of modern technology awareness, with some of the legacy technology. Big hurdle we always come across is people who've come straight out of college and they're great with modern stuff, don't understand any of the legacy stuff, and vice versa. So providing that bridge, I suppose, between those generations is an important aspect, and a cultural review of the utility industry as well, bringing that in at a very early point, understanding where not just this industry, but all of the utility industries are moving towards a different cultural aspect.
Very good. Well, I do hope that you found our run through the future of the water industry post PR19 useful. From what changes PR19 will bring to how customer expectations are changing and the steps that water companies can now take to prosper and thrive in this new environment. Clearly, the industry is going through a period of regulatory and technological upheaval. There are big opportunities though, lots of lessons to learn and also great challenges for anyone working in the industry. So it's vital to start thinking right now, if you can, about how to get ready to compete when PR19 comes into force. If you're interested in finding out more about what the Internet of Things is doing in the utilities sector or in a range of other industries, Vodafone carry out a substantial piece of independent global research every year called the Vodafone IoT Barometer. You can download that this year's version to find out how to benefit from the next industrial revolution. Go for that now. For now, it is time to close. A big thanks to all of our fantastic panelists for sharing their expertise today. Ian, Simon, David and Liam. It's great to have you here today. And of course, thanks to Vodafone for supporting our webinar. From the Market Force team, we really hope that you'll be able to join us at one of our upcoming events. If you'd like to know more about water, don't miss our Water 2017 conference taking place tomorrow if you're watching us live. That's November 21st. If you can't make that, then our Future of Utilities Summit is taking place on the 20th of March 2018. You can find out more about those and all our events at marketforce.eu.com or by following us on Twitter at Future of Utils. It only remains to say thanks very much for watching and sending in your comments and your questions. We'll see you soon. All the best until then. Take care.